Yeah, my name is James Cool. I'm the owner of PaydirtDFS.com. Wait, that's not. Wait, yeah, it's PaydirtDFS.com. I don't know, man. I'm out of practice. It's been a long off season for me going into NFL. Obviously, we've done a couple shows here and there for MLB, but we got to get fully back on schedule for NFL. So now this is kind of the first foray back in. I did do a video earlier talking a little bit about the range of outcomes, but I figured that we could do an actual full stream for the entire models just because I prefer that format anyway. People can ask questions. I can answer them on stream. Other people who might have questions that would be answered on stream can just rewatch and find them there. I just like the streaming format. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to be going through the NFL models that have been built up for the 2025 season over at Paydirt. The vast majority of the models work. There's one, I think, that is going to cause me problems on stream. And that is going to be the showdown range of outcomes, I think. I don't know if I hooked it up before the stream or not, but the optimals are hooked up, so we'll go over those. I'm also going to talk a little bit about strategy and a little bit about how I think the season is going to end up going. Overall, I have some thoughts kind of on the way that we should be dictating the seasons overall. Hold on, I'm going to go post something into the Discord. All right. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask questions, obviously, and I'll try to answer them. I'll answer them the best that I can. For those of you who have not watched a stream that I do, I'm super unprofessional. I'm really bad at this. So if I get distracted or if I go off on a tangent, let me know. I also probably should talk a little bit about our content schedule and what we expect to be going on over at Paydirt. We have a pretty packed schedule, I think, in terms of content for NFL specifically. We'll see how well that holds up once NBA and NHL are back. That always throws a huge fucking wrench into things. So, but we will continue the NFL schedule. Also, betting stuff will be back as well. We had a really good season for MLB in terms of betting. For the most part, I think we hit the metrics that we wanted to hit. Ended up with like a 2% ROI, I think, for the betting model. And that was pretty good across 6,000 or something bets. And also one of the big things that I tried to do with the betting model in MLB and with the betting sheet in MLB was make sure that people's accounts weren't getting fucking shot. So I gave up some ROI intentionally to make sure that account health was taken care of. That was through things like home run bets, which are stupid, and a couple other bet types that I knew were negative ROI for us, but like, you got to give the books theirs so that they will let you have yours. So going to likely do a lot of the same things with NFL. We're going to throw in some anytime touchdown bets, even though I think they're dumb, so that we can maintain our account health, because that's what you got to do in this ecosystem. And who the fuck knows if sports betting is even going to continue to be a thing with the new laws that are in place for 2026. I need to go get back caught up on all that stuff. But I know that the governor of Las Vegas, mayor of Las Vegas, somebody of Las Vegas was trying to introduce a new bill to fix whatever it was that they did to the betting stuff for next year. We'll see if that goes through, but either way, we'll have DFS. So we should probably talk about DFS things. I have up the site, whichever way that is there. First off, hello. How you doing, Andy? Hope you're doing great. DePeach, what's up, man? Hopefully I can answer some of the questions that you had in the Discord. If you have not gone over and jumped in the Discord, you should do that. The Discord is a terrific resource for everyone. I talk a lot about a lot of different things here. I talk a lot about things that I have been working on. I talk a lot about, things that are going on. I interact with the community a lot. So if you're not in the Discord, you should definitely be in the Discord already. You can join the Discord by going into the Paydirt community Discord here. Anyway, nobody cares. People just want to hear me talk about the things that are actually happening at the site. So, okay. If you watched the video earlier that I did on the range of outcomes, I had noted that there are a couple things. I'm not going to go over the portfolio manager or the contest analyzer too much in depth today. Reason being that those both require like very dedicated walkthroughs, and I'm building out tutorials and talking through tutorials for the portfolio manager as I get ready for the season, but I don't want to go too in depth on that in this video. I mostly want to talk about the NFL models themselves. So these ones. Let's go ahead and jump into the range of outcomes. So I talked about the range of outcomes a bit, and on that video, I did a nice little walkthrough video over on YouTube today earlier on. But I mostly want to just kind of drill home a couple things about what I did with models. So, but before we jump into that, let me talk a little bit about my goal for the models this year. So last year, my big push was to make sure that model availability was as good as it could possibly be. And that involved a lot of optimizations in terms of network balancing and DevOps and stuff like that. I have taken that a step further again this year, and I have made it so that the apps themselves are a little bit more optimized and a little bit more usable. I know that a lot of people don't care about these things, but it's housekeeping stuff that I think is worth saying. So the way that the models work now is each individual tab that you are on calculates on tab. Okay. So when you go into the player range of outcomes tab, nothing is happening over on the optimals tab, and nothing is happening on the hand builder tab. Like those tabs essentially don't exist while you're in a different tab. So that makes it so that things are very fast. It also makes it so that we're not going to hit quota limits. It also makes it so that things can be quick and load efficiently and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. The other main thing when you're looking at the models is when it comes to the models themselves, I have two different settings here, right? So the first setting that I have is going to be simple, and the second setting is advanced. So let me show you what that means in practice. So when you open up the app initially, you are going to have it on simple mode, okay? Now, if you go to advanced mode, then it is going to refresh, and it's going to give you the full range of outcomes here, okay? Now, the reason for this specifically is because simple mode works much better for mobile. So if I were to take this and put it into mobile mode, right? Now, on your phone, this is mostly what you would see. You still do not have any side scrolling here, right? If I change in mobile mode to advanced, then you're going to have some side scrolling here, right? Like you don't have a choice. You have to side scroll to get all this stuff. But you do not have to do that in simple mode. So I wanted to make it so that the site was as mobile optimized as possible. That was a big thing for me. So when you open it up, the first thing you're going to see is player range of outcomes. You're going to have the simple view, and you're going to have DraftKings. You can switch to FanDuel as well if you plan on playing on a worse site. I am going to do the vast majority of my analysis in advanced mode because I think that it has more of the things that I care about. It's going to give me a lot of the salary thresholds. It's going to give me the different ownership tiering. But in simple, you have everything that you need, right? You have the player, you have the position, you have what their median outcome is, you have their upside, right? Their top five finish rate, and you have their value, 4x rate, right? How often they 4x their salary. So you can get everything that you need in simple mode, but simple mode, just for what it's worth, is mostly for mobile. I will be mostly doing things in advance. So this is what you're going to see here. You're going to see the full range of outcomes here for all of the players, all the positions, all of that kind of stuff based on the slate that you are selecting here. So when you hit the info and filters, you're going to see a couple different things here, right? You're going to see regular, you're going to see showdown, you're going to see main slate, secondary, late slate, Thursday through Monday. You can select specific teams, right? Like if you just wanted to see Washington, we can do that here. You can see the range of outcomes for just Washington. You can also see what positions you would like to view, right? Like, so you can see this is overall, right? And we can take out specific positions here, right? We can say, we don't want to see quarterbacks. We don't want to see defense. This is essentially the same thing as just seeing flex, right? So here we're seeing running backs, wide receivers, running back, wide receiver, blah, 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 blah. Now, crucially, when we are looking at this main view, this is the overall position table, okay? So this is all positions inclusive, meaning that the top 5 finish rate, the top finish rate, the top 10 finish rate, these finishing percentiles, these are inclusive of all positions, right? Inclusive of all positions. If instead, and let's add the positions back in here, right? Let's just make it so that we have everyone here. If instead we went to quarterback, note how these change now. The reason for this is I run in the back end every single position exclusively, as well as one full run that is inclusive of all positions. So in relation to quarterbacks, if you view the position table for quarterbacks, what you're going to see here is the finishing rates that are only for quarterbacks, inclusive of quarterbacks. So Jaden Daniels has a 33.3% chance to finish as the highest overall scoring quarterback, not player. If you switch this back over to overall, you'll see that it changes, right? He has a 4% chance to finish as the top scoring player overall. Very important distinction, right? So making sure to use these info and filters and making sure to use the different position tables will give you a really, really good idea of the different types of players that you want to choose. Like, you have all the money in the world to spend on a tight end. Okay, you should be looking at which tight ends have the best chance to be the top finishers, top 5 finishers in only relation to other tight ends, right? You don't want to see them in relation to everyone else because you're choosing a tight end. So you should know the finishing rates and the simulation results of just tight ends. I wanted to make sure to include that here for Paydirt. I don't know if you can get that other places, but you can definitely get it here at Paydirt. Really quick, because I think I misspoke here. No, I don't think that Nevada is getting DFS. My point that I was trying to make is that the mayor or governor or fucking elected official, whoever it is for Nevada, was introducing a bill to try to redact and reset some of the really shitty betting laws that are going into effect in 2026. If you have not seen what those are, you should go look up 90% losses betting laws at your local Google, right? And read up, because they pretty much just kneecap. One, they completely kneecap the poker industry. And two, they vastly kneecap the sports betting industry. So go look that up. Hopefully that new law gets, or that new bill gets passed and we get those reset. But if they don't, DFS is going to be everything for us. Mike, yeah, totally agree. So that is player range of outcomes. You'll be able to do a whole bunch of things here. If you're using Portfolio Manager, you can export the ROO in exactly the kind of format that you need for the Portfolio Manager. If you want to export this entire table, you can do that here, right? And you can get all of the different things. You can get ceiling, you can get all the finishing percentiles, you can get the salary thresholds, get all this different kind of stuff. Last thing that I'll say here is just do a little slight explanation of what each one of these means, right? So the floor and the ceiling are deviations of the median. The top finish rate is how often that player finishes as the top overall scorer based on the position table that you're viewing. Top 5 finish rate is how often they finish in the top 5. Top 10, how often they finish in the top 10. 20 plus rate, 20 plus percentage is how often they score 20 or more fantasy points. 2x, 3x, and 4x are all based on their salary. So how often George Kittle hits a fantasy score that is 2 times his 5,800 salary. So 2 times that is 11.6, right? Divided by 100 is 11.6. So how often does he score more than 11.6 fantasy points? 62% of the time, right? Pretty self-explanatory through those things. And then ownership, regular ownership, small field ownership, large field ownership, cash game ownership. These still need to be optimized. So once we have ownership percentages that actually come in, because these are not accurate yet, these will reflect based on the algorithms that I have for small field, large field, and cash game ownership. And then, what was this last column? I don't remember. Oh yeah, cap and ownership and LevX. LevX is mostly being sunsetted this year. I'll be using the Portfolio Manager and the Contest Sims a lot more than I'll be using LevX. How often does Devon Kane score 20 fantasy points? I don't know, man. How about you go fuck yourself, Mike? How about that? How often does Mike go fuck himself? The answer is 100% of the time. Okay, let's move on here to the stacks range of outcomes. So stacks range of outcomes is very similar to the player range of outcomes, except it is based on the stacks instead. So what I do is I calculate out and I use a combinations algorithm in the back end to find the 3-man combinations for each team, and then I grab the top 3 overall based on medians. So what that means, if we were to say specific games here and say Cincinnati, right? You're going to see the top 3 overall Cincinnati stacks based on median. So the top one is Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and then Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Mike Gesicki, and then Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Mike Gesicki. So this is for all of the teams, right? And then it is organized based on median so that you can see what teams have the best 3-man combo if you are considering a QB +2 stack. Now, foreshadowing. I don't know how much I care about QB +2s this year. I don't know how much I care about QB +1s. Overall, I think that this table is still going to be very valuable for considering things like single entry, things like 3-max, considering where to kind of start builds when it comes to Cincinnati stacks and Tampa Bay and Detroit, like the guys who, the quarterbacks who need to get there through passing for like 3 touchdowns and 300, the old like 3 by 300 adage that I have. Shout out to Aaron Rodgers, who has not done that since like the 2020 season. But overall, this table is going to show you where to start if you are building out QB +2 stacks. So very similar to the way that we are looking at the range of outcomes for players, we can look at it for stacks as well, right? We're going to see how much the stack costs, what the median, floor, and ceiling are for that stack, how often that stack is the top overall finisher in terms of all of these different stacks in the simulations, how often they're in the top 5, top 10, how often they score 60 or more fantasy points. This should be a percentage, but I'm bad at coding. How often they 2x, 3x, and 4x the total salary that it costs. So if you're looking for a value stack, you would sort this by 4x. And there we go. We have Cam Ward. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Alek Ayomanor and Chigakonkwo. What? This is not a real name. This is not a real name. There's a lot of creative players this year so far. Let me tell you, I'm going to have a hard time this year. And I'm going to have a hard time this year straight up because nobody pronounces names better than James. Yeah. And I own it. All right. I was telling Margaret on the way home, God forbid I have to do like regular MLB or NHL slate talks. I would get fucking pounced. I can't pronounce names for shit. Or do I pronounce names better than everybody else? That's the question. And then you'll have the ownership of the stack. And then again, LevX. I think that LevX is more applicable for this stacks table than it is for the player ROO. And it's still something that I will lean on a little bit, but still not quite as much as the contest sims or the portfolio manager. So this one is pretty straightforward. You know, if you just want to see different slates, right? You can see the different slates. Looks like I don't have anything for late slate right now. It's okay. But this is a good table to get your bearings when it comes to QB +2s, QB +1s, stuff like that. So let's move over to the hand builder. Okay, the hand builder was giving me some problems in the range of outcomes walkthrough earlier, but I have fixed that. So the hand builder is a really cool addition. This actually came over from the MLB models that I had built out. It was actually built out for Pablo in the Discord because he's an old person and he just refused to get off of Fantasy Labs hand builder. So I built him a hand builder here in the range of outcomes, and I think that it's actually pretty cool and can be reconstituted for NFL. So hand builder is pretty cool. You can just like click dudes and it's going to build the lineup for you, right? Let's say that we want to go with Jaden Daniels, Ashton Genty, Lucky Irving, then go with Jalen Waddle, George Kittle, JSN. And yeah, I mean, you can just build out a full lineup here, right? And then if you want to remove somebody, you just unclick them. Pretty sweet, pretty slick. It is still a bit jumpy right now just because I haven't optimized this yet. I just was rebuilding the lineup build thing. But you have some other things that you can do here too, right? So you have player filters. You can select specific positions that you want to see down here in the table. You can select a salary max. If you only have, $4,000 to pick a player, then you can do that. Team filters. So if you select any of these, then only those players are going to show up for the teams that you select. And then quick fill. So the quick fill is kind of my take on looking at something similar to a quick fill that I have in the baseball one. So the quick fill in the baseball one says, how how many players do you want from a team in your stack? Where do you want the stack to come from, like front of the order, middle of the order, or a wraparound? And then, go ahead and just build it out. So I have something similar here where we can say, what team do we want to autofill? How many players do we want to autofill from it? And then what players do I want from that team, right? So here we're going to do a Cincinnati stack, a 3-man Cincinnati stack with QB wide receiver, hit the quick fill, and there you go. There's a nice little starting spot for Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And then you can build out the rest of your lineup. All right, let's say that we want to go with Bijan Robinson. Let's sort this by 2x and get, oh no, where did he go? I don't know where he went. Let's also grab, say, Chase Brown with Trayvon Henderson. And then JSN, we'll bring it with, we can do Ricky Pearsall here in the flex. Let's go ahead and go up here. Let's go player filters. We need to choose a defense. Oh, that's not good. Well, that's broken. See, I tried to fix this earlier. I don't know why it didn't completely fix on there. Let's see if we can sort this. There we go. That'll work. All right, so grabbing defenses. What the fuck is happening? Why did that break all of a sudden? Oh, I know why that broke. Just kidding. Hold on. I know why that broke. So the problem is, yeah, boofed is an understatement. This thing was fucking giving me so many problems earlier. It'll be fixed in the next couple days. The problem is the session state stuff just gets so fucking weird when it comes to this. When I sort this, does it take it away? Oh, that's super interesting. Okay. Anyway, once you build out a lineup, let's see if I can build out a lineup without sorting it, just so that I can show off the saving stuff. We will go with Trayvon Henderson. Go with T. Higgins is already there. We'll go with McMillan. Then I need some cheap guys here. Let's go all the way down and grab defense. Let's see. Oops. And then how much do we have here? 3,600. Go Cade Otton. And then 3,400. I guess it doesn't matter right now, right? We can go Tesla. Okay. So once you build a lineup, then it'll tell you some things about like 49.7 for the total salary. Median is 120. And then we'll go ahead and we'll save the lineup. So now we have a saved lineup here. And then you can also export the hand builds. So there you go. You'll be able to do that. You can save as many lineups as you want, and then you can just clear the save if you want to get rid of them. So this obviously has some hiccups right now. I think that it's just all session state stuff. It was throwing me some errors early on in the range of outcomes, but this is going to be fixed over the next day or two. This was the only model that I was just like, should I show this off today? But fuck it. We do it live. Let's see. There's no way that I can do that. Tetaroa Tesla? No, Tetaroa McMillan, right? Tetaroa McMillan? Did I say that right? I probably said that wrong. One way or another, fuck you. Okay, let's move on to the optimals here. So optimals are going to replace the optimizer. So you'll see that in the NFL dropdowns here, there is no optimizer. The optimals are my answer for that. So they are built up in the back end in the same way that I'm building out the seed frames, right? And this is the kind of stuff that feeds into the contest sims, which we'll talk about next. So these get fed in, and then based on the info and filters that are here, it's going to display down here. So right now, this is displaying 150 optimals that have a minimum salary of 49K, a minimum stack use of 1, a maximum stack use of 5. It's for regular, for the main slate, and with a priority variable of projection. Now, I'll talk through a couple of those things, but you can think of this list of lineups the exact same way that you think of any other optimizer at any other site, right? If you were to go there and you were to click optimize, this is what it gives you. So You'll also be able to see a couple different things here. You'll be able to see optimal statistics. This is based on the entirety of the 10,000 lineups that it brings in. The minimum salary, projection, and ownership of all of those lineups, the max, as well as the average. When I am building and when I am going through the portfolio manager and when I'm considering my optimals, I look at the average as the lowest that I want to go. So like when I am building out my lineups for my portfolio, I'm going to put a minimum of $48,700. I'm going to put a minimum projection of 123. I'm going to put a minimum ownership of 60. Right? Like that's just what I'm going to set my minimums at, because I want to make sure that I am maintaining at least the average of what my optimal set says is useful. I can probably take this off the screen now. So then when you go down here, it's going to tell you a couple other things. So based on the 150 lineups up here, Emeka Egbuka, man, it's going to be a fucking long year, guys. He shows up in 81 of them, 54% of the total lineups. James Conner's in 52, Jane Daniels in 51.3, Christian McCaffrey in 50. So if I were to change this and say instead, show me 1,000 lineups, one, it's going to reset. Now we see 1,000 lineups here. And then we go down and now we see some different numbers, right? Because this is the display frequency. So Jaden Daniels in the top 1,000 is in 37.2%. James Conner's in 32.5%. And Egbuka is in 32.4%, right? So Egbuka is in less of the top 1,000, but more of the top 150, which to me says that he is more valuable, right? If he shows up in more of the top 150 projected lineups than he does in the top 1,000, that means that he is cream rising to the top. Fuck yeah. Me nailing the names is a good, that's good omen for the year, I think. So, like I said before, this is actually loading from 10,000 optimals that are loaded into the app, right? So while this is the display frequency, this shows you the percentage of the players in this table. You can also look at the seed frame frequency, which is for all 10,000 lineups, right? You'll be able to see that James Conner's in 37.61%, Christian McCaffrey is in 35.1%, Egbuka is 33.84%, and Jane Daniels is 30.77%. So just some good information if you were going to be building out a core for your players and for your lineups, right? Like knowing what players show up the most out of the top 10,000 lineups, pretty good information. So some other things here that I think are worth noting. With this, the priority variable, this is a newer introduction that I put in for baseball. And it's something that I think is important because of the way that I look at the way that optimals should be used. When you are building for GPPs, for large field stuff, I think that projection matters more. And correlation matters more, right? Ownership matters less. When you are building for small field or cash games, projection doesn't matter as much. Correlation doesn't matter at all. Negative correlation even matters a little bit more than positive correlation. And ownership matters more. So this priority variable is telling the database, send either projections that have the highest projection or send lineups that have the highest projection, the highest ownership, or a mix of projection and ownership. So watch what happens. I have my top overall projected lineup is 141.94 right now, based on all of these filters. But the ownership on that lineup is only 62%. So if I change the priority variable to ownership, now my top overall projection is 120.0, but the top overall ownership is 83.64. So it flips it so that it is saying, I would rather have optimals that will give me the highest ownership rather than the highest projection. So this set would be more applicable for small field and for cash games. The projections variable would be more appropriate for large field and for, winner take all and stuff like that. And then the other thing that I wanted to do was make it so that you could mix it, right? So if we wanted to, say, have a mix of projection and ownership from the database, as if we are building out a portfolio of lineups that matters a little bit more than just, we're not going to build everything for small field, everything for large field, right? We're going to have a mix of those things. We want to have some hedging, want to have some natural deviations. What you can do is you can hit mix. And what mix will do is it will bring in a mix of either 50-50, it's based on projection. So right now, this is 50% of the optimals that you bring down from the database are going to be based on projection, and the other 50% are on ownership. If I change this to 75, then it's going to bring in 75% of it as projections and 25% of it as ownership. And we can see what this does if we go down and we look at the seed frame frequencies, right? So right now, this is with a mix of 75% projection, 25% ownership. We have McCaffrey, Debo, James Conner, 39, 37, 36, right? And then Jaden Daniels, 32. If instead I only bring down 10% of the lineups as projections, now we end up with Debo Samuel in 51% of the seed frame lineups, Christian McCaffrey in 37, Jordan Love in 31. Right? So you can see what a big difference this makes, focusing more on ownership than on projection. So this is something that I think is going to be really powerful for a lot of people. This is kind of like an easier and I feel more intuitive way to look at building out your optimals and putting together your portfolio for when you are building, your huge set of NFL lineups. I also think that it's going to be really, really important for things like the portfolio manager, right? Because I have talked a lot about when I'm building out things in the portfolio manager, I am looking to hedge some of my lineups. Like I'm not doing all positive lineup edge lineups. I'm accepting that some of them should be negative edge. I'm accepting that some of them are not going to have the best finishing percentile, but I'm doing that to naturally hedge myself against volatile lineups that do have a really high lineup edge and do have a high finishing percentile that are inherently low ownership, right? So this is kind of a way of doing that without using the portfolio manager. I think you should use portfolio manager, but if you just wanted to do that, I think that would work. So finally, as I have talked about all of these things, if you wanted to export these things, you absolutely can. If you want to export all 10,000 lineups, you can do that by hitting that button. And then you can either do as IDs or names. And you can do it with a regular export optimal set, which is going to include things like salary, projection, team count, secondary, all that kind of stuff. Or if you're exporting it so that you can use it in the portfolio manager, you can just hit this button. And that's what I'll hit the most. And then this will give you all 10,000 of the lineups. And you can fucking do whatever you want with all 10,000 of these lineups. This is just 10,000 lineups that you can just use, right? If you want to include these in an aggregate, if you want to sim these using some other program, if you're a super user that has some need for 10,000 lineups, there you go. 10,000 lineups, my gift to you. For me, personally, what I'll end up doing instead is filtering, right? So I only want the lineups that are 49,000 in minimum salary and are at least one minimum stack used. I'm going to export based on these, right? And then I'm going to have the names. And now if I do that, you'll see that there are 5,442 lineups, right? And then I will upload these in the portfolio manager as is, because that's where I'm going to be doing the vast majority of my actual lineup work. So this is everything in the range of outcomes, right? And this really is a one-stop shop tool. Like you don't need anything other than this. I think that you should use the portfolio manager. I think that you should use the contest settings. I think that you should use other tools. But if you did not want to, you absolutely don't need to. You've got everything that you need here, right? Like as you're looking through here and you're looking at the players that are valuable, and then you're looking at the stacks that are valuable, and then you look at the optimals and you say, okay, well, I know that X, Y, or Z is valuable and I like what I'm looking at over in the range of outcomes in the stacks. Maybe I just want to try to find the stacks that make the most sense based on those things, right? Or you can export it like, okay, so we just said Cincinnati is the best stack. Cool. Go over to the player range of outcomes. Who is the best value pieces that I can use to make it so that Cincinnati stacks work? Okay, Egbuka and Pearsall and rip Jalen Coker, which I have not updated for yet. But like Ricky Pearsall and Egbuka, right? Okay, cool. Go over to the optimals. All right. I only want minimum stacks 2. I want to spend 49K. I then want to export based on a mix of 50-50, right? Export this. Give me the full optimal set. I don't want to use the portfolio manager, so just give me the full optimal set. Sick. All right, now I'm going to do some filtering here. I know that I want Cincinnati stacks. Fuck everything except for a Cincinnati stack, right? 6. So here's my Cincinnati stacks. Just give me one where, look at that. Joe Burrow, Christian McCaffrey, Egbuka, Pearsall, JSN, George Kittle, Chase Brown. Oh, okay. So let's go with only 3 mans, right? There we go. Okay, so T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, James Conner, JCM, Ja'Cory Croxy Merritt, I guess, Tyler Warren, David Njoku, Washington Commanders defense. There you go. Like this, you can use the range of outcomes to pick any lineups that you need to play. This is truly one-stop shop, and that was my goal with this tool. So if you have any questions about this, right, feel free to ask. Happy to answer things, but I do want to move on to some other things here because I did want to talk about each of the different tools. So let's go to the Pivot Finder really quick because the Pivot Finder, I think, is another tool that I will be using pretty frequently. Really quick, yay, we get a Core 4 this year. No, you don't. You can go fuck yourself. Actually, maybe you will. We're using AI to write things, so maybe I'll write a template that just says, give me the 4 best players based on this, right? We can do that. I'm sure Tribe can put that together. That's easy. That's easy. We'll get a Core 4 this year. This is a really cool tool. Yeah, the range of outcomes and specifically the optimals, very, very useful. I think that, there's really no reason why anybody else would need anything other than just those. But we are going to show off a couple other things just for shits and giggles. Let's see. I got a... Oops. It is CFB. Rip. Okay. So, all right, we're on the Pivot Finder now. So Pivot Finder is also another really cool tool that I think, we'll put together some content on this, but this is another one of those things where I think that intuitively it makes a lot of sense to use. And I think that people are going to really find themselves using this to a high degree. So what this tool is basically like, if we have the chalk, so let's really quick, let's go back to the range outcomes. Can't wait to break the PM. Yeah, damn straight. Actually, I think that if you go load the PM right now, it'll load NFL. I'm pretty sure that it loads NFL right now. I've been having discussions back and forth about how I want to treat stacking designations, but I'm pretty sure that actually, you know what? Fuck you. We can fucking go see if it loads. We can go see if it loads before I get into that. So NFL Classic, yep. And then I'll go here. We'll go NFL, salaries, optimals, projections. Wait until this guy stops running around up there. I think it loads. Yeah, this is just a bigger file, right? Yeah, there you go. 6,000 lineups. Yeah. So yeah, that loads. You can go play around with NFL. If you have not used Portfolio Manager, you should absolutely use Portfolio Manager. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about it in this video, but thing is fucking crazy. It's really, really good. Anyway, so for the Pivot Finder, let's just take a look at who is going to be chalk right now. I mean, ownership just doesn't matter at the moment, but let's just take a look. So Deebo Samuel at 5,200. All right, he looks like he's probably going to be popular. 5,200. Jaden Daniels projects really well. Let's match up against the Giants, and they're shitty. So yeah, okay, Deebo Samuel's probably going to be chalk. Let's go over here and create some comps for him. So what this is going to do is this will look at a player and say, all right, we have Deebo Samuel. We have an acceptable salary range, an acceptable median range. Oops. Hold on. My mom is calling me. Give me a second here. Hello. Hi, what's up? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's pretty good. Hey, I'm in the middle of a stream. Can you call Margaret? Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad everything is okay. All right. All right. Love you, Mom. Bye. For those of you who do not know, Mama Paydirt, my mom, is in rehab right now. She had some health complications go on, so we've been trying to mitigate those situations and handle that kind of stuff. So, but she's doing well. Happy about that. She's out of the hospital and back into the rehab center. So she should be back up on her feet in the next couple of weeks, for those who have been wondering. Has not been a fun situation to deal with, but she's a champion and she has to be back so that she can dominate Showdown again. Anyway, Portfolio Manager. What this tool does is it tries to find comparable options that you can play instead of the chalk. So if we're looking at Deebo Samuel specifically, right? What if we wanted to find some players to play instead of Deebo Samuel, right? So let's set an acceptable salary range of plus or minus $300. So plus or minus his $5,200 salary, right? Let's set an acceptable median range around his median, which is 14.4. And let's set it to just all positions just for now, right? Just so that we can see this run through. And then let's go ahead and simulate the appropriate pivots. So now what this is going to do is it is going to actually create a range of outcomes around the players that you could play instead of Deebo Samuel. So here we see that Deebo Samuel has a lot of different pivots. Now, granted, some of these are quarterbacks, right? But we have Teteroa McMillan. I still am going to butcher that. We have Jerry Jeudy, who's right there. I mean, McMillan just right away, right? You can see he projects for 3% ownership. He's the exact same price, projects exactly the same as Deebo Samuel, and is a fourth of the ownership. Like, McMillan, in a vacuum, is a way better play just based on ownership alone, right? Ownership and projection. But we also have other guys here, right? I mean, Jacoby Myers, 5,100. He's only 1 fantasy point below, 1.2 fantasy points below, and he projects for less than half the ownership, right? Calvin Ridley projects for 1 fantasy point less. I mean, just 1 fantasy point, not even 1 full fantasy point less, right? And it's projected for a fourth of the ownership. So this tool allows you to find things like that. If we only wanted to see, say, wide receivers, right? We could do that. Just go up here. We're just going to load and reset the data. We can go Deebo Samuel. We're going to go specific positions. We're going to go running backs or wide receivers, and we're going to simulate the pivots. And then you can see this guy just running around up here. And then we're going to see all the wide receiver pivots that you can make, right? So this is just specifically wide receivers. We have McMillan, we have Jeudy, we have Ridley, we have Jameson Williams. All these guys project basically within 1 fantasy point of Deebo Samuel. And look, all of their ownerships are way lower. So this tool is really, really valuable. Like we can look and see, say that a running back is going to be, a running back is $6,500, and we know that he's going to be like 25% owned. We can run this tool and we can say, okay, well, instead of playing him in my really chalky lineups, let's just swap him out for X, Y, or Z player, right? That's going to be something that I utilize a lot in the Portfolio Manager, is I'm going to be looking and saying through my lineups, okay, I have a whole lot of Deebo Samuel, right? I have 28% Deebo Samuel. I want to get that down to 15%. I want to match the field and replace the other 13% with McMillan and Jeudy and Ridley and like these guys who project exactly the same, but for less ownership, right? Look at my lineups that are really highly owned, right? Like maybe I went into the range of outcomes and I went to the optimals and I said, okay, just give me a priority variable of ownership, right? And now I can see that I have Deebo Samuel in this lineup, and this lineup is the highest projected ownership in terms of ownership. Well, look at this. All that I need to do is just switch out Deebo Samuel for McMillan, and automatically, like I can play this lineup in small field and 3-inch max. I can play this in large field because McMillan is only going to be 3% owned, right? So the Pivot Finder, I think, is probably one of my favorite tools that I've built just for its very intuitive use, right? It's just something where you can very easily just go in and say, okay, I just want to say, are there any pivots that I can make to Christian McCaffrey, right? What can I do with Christian McCaffrey? Are there any running backs that are within his range and project the same? Like Ashton Genty for $300 less looks like a totally fine play in regards to his ownership. Christian McCaffrey is still a good play. That's fine. But like, for 13% less ownership, for a fraction of the ownership, you get Jonty for, his upside is likely similar based on medians. So this is a really cool tool. And I think that it's something that a lot of people can use. I think that a lot of content can be made off of this, right? Like there are other content creators that want to use this tool to say like, we're going to run through all the pivots. You know what you can do? If you're with another site, you can even upload your own projections here. All you need to do is have a projection file that has these columns and it will load this tool for you, right? So this is a really cool tool that I think a lot of people should use and that I'm going to use plenty. And then if you want to reset things, you can just, go up here, hit load reset data. I need to get rid of this button. Famous first, yeah. I mean, it's been a lot over the last. We've been going through this for about 2 months. I'm not really a vocal person about the problems in my IRL life, but we've been going through this for a couple months, and I'm glad that she's finally on the way back up. Mom PD, damn straight. Damn straight. Okay, so this is the pivot finder. Another thing that you can do here, also, just by the by, let's go ahead and run Deebo Samuel again. And what we can do is we can also export these tables, right? So now you can get a list. This is a range of outcomes export, a list of all of the players that you can use instead of Deebo Samuel. So if you wanted to set a rule somewhere that said, make sure that you are using one of these, if a lineup has Deebo, use one of McMillan, Jameson Williams, or Jerry Jeudy, like you have a very quick and easy list that you can reference for that, right? Pretty cool thing. So let's move on to the Stack Finder. Stack Finder is a really cool tool that follows the trimming logic that we built for the theory of DFS. So the trimming logic from a very basic point of view is if a lineup has a certain amount of projection, it also has to have a justifiably high ownership. If the projection of a lineup goes down, the ownership also has to come down. So in practice, what this means is if you have lineup A that has a projection of 100 and an ownership of 100, if lineup B has a projection of 98, it cannot have a projection, an ownership projection above 100. It also has to come down. So if lineup A has a projection of 100 and an ownership of 100, and lineup B has a projection of 98, it has to have an ownership under 100. And then lineup C, whatever lineup B's ownership was, lineup C has to have an ownership lower than that. So that's the basic trimming function, right? This tool will do that for you, but based on stacks. So similar to when we go over here and we look at the stacks range of outcomes, right? If we just look at this in terms of medians and ownership, we can already see that this Cincinnati three-man, if we were going to trim just this list, this Cincinnati three-man would set the bar. It has the highest median, so what is its ownership? The Washington stack goes down from this median, but it goes up in ownership. So this Washington stack would actually be cut out. And then we would end up with Tampa Bay as the next acceptable stack. So this follows that. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say, let's just go QB plus 2. And let's say max salary 35K. Sure, that's fine. And let's go ahead and do wide receivers and tight ends. And let's run the stack analysis and see what it says. So obviously, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, that is what we saw over here. This is the top overall, 53.36, ownership 25.06. Ownership's a little bit different here because it calculates it on click. Doesn't come from the database, but yeah, it is what it is. The next one is Tampa Bay, and then Miami, and then San Francisco, Jacksonville. And then you can see that the ownership continues to drop down. We have a linear degradation of projection and ownership. So what this is doing is saying, okay, you're not going to get any stacks that have more ownership than is justified by their projection. This is a very good way to build out large field stacks and large field portfolios. It's also a very good way to look at what your options are for 3 max and 5 max. So Based on this, we're likely not getting to Washington stacks in small field and in 3 max, right? We're probably going to have a lot more New York Giants than we are Washington. And the reason for that is because Washington just has a little bit too much ownership. It is what it is. We get down here, like, we're probably not going to see too much Detroit, are we? Because Detroit, when we look at the ownership here versus their projection, it just doesn't work, right? Even this one has a 22.29. This one is closer, but it's higher ownership than Tampa Bay. So another thing about this, in the portfolio manager, we have trimming functions, right? But in the trimming functions in the portfolio manager, they are full lineup trimming. So it is the ownership of the full lineup, and then it will trim on that. We also have Slack. So the trimming function in the portfolio manager is much more powerful than it is in this one. This one should just be allowing you to get a look at a glance, what stacks are the most over-owned and what stacks have ownership justified by their projection. I think that this on the fly is a totally fair way to look at 3 max and 5 max teams. I know I mentioned it before, but can we get the QB first column and the running back in column 2 if using one? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Just fell on the back burner. I've got to do it. But yeah, it's really easy to just be like, is this player a quarterback? Just put them in the first one. But I appreciate the ping on that because I did forget about it until I just ran it. One second. Okay. So we could also do things like QB +1, right? If we wanted to see skinny stacks, we run stack analysis on that. Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels. We can see this kind of stuff. Here we do see that Washington actually is an acceptable stack, right? It's just when Deebo Samuel gets added into the mix, then it's just too much ownership for the projection. So play around with this. I think this is a really cool tool. I do think that the portfolio manager's trimming function is like 10 times more powerful and something that I would think that you should use over this. But if you're in a jam and you can't upload a portfolio, this is totally feasible. Like on mobile, this is completely acceptable, right? Like this is a really cool, quick, and easy tool to use when you are mobile because you're going to be able to see what the full stack is, what salary, ownership, all that kind of stuff. So this is a good mobile tool to use. Let's look at the betting models really quick. I don't know if the betting models are fully plugged in yet. Most of it is. I know the game betting model is fully up. I know the prop market is hooked up. I know that the projections are hooked up. I haven't reran them for the Coker stuff, but that's okay. Player prop trends obviously do not quite work yet just because like this is last year. But I'll be able to show off a couple of these things. So cool. Okay. Betting models, right? Paydirt is not just a place for DFS. It's also for betting. Our bet tracking has been really, really strong. Last year for NFL, I think we finished 11% up in ROI. MLB this year, like I said, we finished around +2%. And that was with like account health accounted for, right? Like I was purposely doing home run bets, which I know are negative EV, just so that we could keep accounts healthy. But the betting models here at Paydirt are really strong. So we're going to have game betting models. We're going to have the prop market. We're going to have projections, player prop trends, as well as player prop simulations and stat-specific simulations, right? So let's talk about the game betting model first. The first thing that you're going to see is for each team, you're going to see what their win percentage is in the Paydirt model. You're going to see what Vegas has them, and this is an average of what their odds are, right? And it includes VIG. And then you're going to see the difference in win rate, right? So Philadelphia, Vegas has them as a winner 34% of the time. Dallas is a winner 34% of the time per Vegas. Per Paydirt, it's 25%. Vegas has Philadelphia at 80%. Paydirt has them at 75%. So you wouldn't actually want to bet either one of these, right? Because of the VIG. If you could find something where Vegas had where you were getting offered a line that was less than 75% for Philadelphia, then you could go bet it. But based on the average lines, you wouldn't want to bet either one of these. The Paydirt spread for Dallas is +8. For Philly, it's -8. the Vegas spread is +5, and for Philly, it's -7. So you could end up betting Philadelphia, right, for -0.5. I need to flip the conditional on this. But you could end up building Philadelphia. The thing that you would actually want to do when you look at this, though, is say, okay, what team has the largest spread diff, right? And the largest negative spread diff. Like I said, I need to flip the conditionals here. But Washington, for instance, Vegas has them as a 6-point favorite. Paydirt has them as a 9-point favorite, right? Vegas has them as a 74% money line favorite. Paydirt has them as 75% money line favorite. So if you wanted to see what the largest diffs are here, right? Tennessee, Paydirt has them 32% to win. Vegas has them 24% to win. San Francisco, 64. Vegas, 54. This would be the way that you would find money line bets, and this would be the way that you find spread bets. The spread model was very strong last year. You can ask Direwalk, who was using it for his one, he was building parlays, but also for his survivors. He did very well with spread model, and it's been something that's been strong for every sport. The MLB spread model was strong. The NHL one is strong. NFL, I really, really like the way that I built out things for spreads as it pertains to the major sports. So very strong model. I suggest using the spread diff to get your action in. Prop market is a way to aggregate out what the market looks at or what the market odds are for different players and different props. So here you're going to see passing yards, but we could also see rushing yards, right? And what we're going to end up seeing is the rushing yards prop for each individual player, right? Like Tyler Algier is 22.5 on FanDuel, 23.35 on DraftKings, 23.31 on MGM, 23. So FanDuel actually has the lowest odds. So if you wanted to bet the over, you would go do it on FanDuel. This is just line aggregation, right? But people like this stuff, so I built it. I think that it's worthwhile to have just as a quick check, but all this stuff is built into the models as well. You then also have full stat projections for quarterbacks and for position players, flex, right? You'll be able to see, who is projected for the most, receiving touchdowns and rushing yards, all that kind of different stuff, right? So this is full stat projections. You can also see, and this is better in season, but here's the player prop trends, and this is going to tell you how often they have beaten their prop over the last 3 games, last 6 games, last 10 games, and the last 6 average, as well as what their projection is, and the implied over. This is going to tell you a lot of really cool information about a player and what their trends are for the different books and the different stats that you're looking at, right? So if we look at rushing yards, yeah, these are all broken right now because it's only in-season stuff, right? I don't actually know why passing yards is working. That's really silly. But this stuff, as soon as we get into the season, it's going to track the player trends that we use so that we can bet on things over or under. But this isn't telling you anything right now. Player prop simulations are where you can say, okay, if Jaden Daniels' passing yards prop was 250.5 and I wanted to bet the over, the line was 150, let's see what that looks like in terms of his deviations, right? In terms of his distributions. So when this is finished, what it's going to show us is first it's going to show us this, which is hilarious. And then it's going to say, okay, here is his distribution outcome. The implied odds are 59%. The mean outcome is 234. He beats the prop 38% of the time, so it's a no bet. But what if instead it was plus 150? Or let's say plus 175, right? Let's simulate that prop instead. So then it'll run through. It'll print that weird int 64 thing, which I know exactly what that problem is. I just need to go over there and rewrite it and actually fix that part of it. But then it's going to show us the distribution again. And so now the implied odds are 36%. He beats the prop 39% of the time. It still says no bet, but that's closer, right? I think that the bet threshold here is it wants 10% cushion between beating the prop and the implied odds. So this is really good for laddering things. Like if somebody's passing yards for, who sucks, right? Say Daniel Jones. If he was going for 250 and the odds were like 275, wonder what that actually looks like. Because I haven't looked at it. I think his passing yards prop is probably something like 200 or something like that. I'm going to guess. Let's see what that gives us. Okay, so he only beats prop 16% of the time. I have his mean outcome at 201. The implied odds are 26%. So you wouldn't even want to hit 250 at plus 275, but you might want to hit 225, right? You might want to hit 230. So this is really good for laddering. And then the last thing, and I'm not sure if this is hooked up yet, so this might break. But let's go ahead and select DraftKings, and let's select player passing yards. You have to do aggregate. So what this is going to allow you to do is it's going to simulate the prop category for every single player for what their prop is on the book that you select and tell you who to bet and who not to bet. I don't know if this is hooked up yet. Hey, it's hooked up. Fucking sick. Okay, so mean outcome is 224.46. The prop is 201 for Sam Darnold on DraftKings. The implied over is 53%. Trending over is 80%. Over rate is 66%. The edge is 13%. We want the under on JJ McCarthy. So yeah, this is going to be something that is kind of like if you are a sports bettor and you just want to know what the best bet to make for any specific prop category is, this is what you would do, right? And then you can see at a glance, okay, Sam Darnold is the best over, JJ McCarthy is the best under. Go put those in on DraftKings and go about your day, right? This is a really, really easy tool to use. I wonder if I have passing yards hooked up yet or rushing yards hooked up yet. No, I don't have rushing yards yet. What about receiving yards? Yeah, cool. Okay, receiving yards. So the best under is Jonathan Taylor. His mean outcome is 9.61. His props 13.5. His trending over was 0%. And of course, it's going over to back to last year. So the under rate is really, really strong here. 82%. Edge is 30% on the under. And then we have a bunch of, overs here because of, again, this is based on last year's data. But this would very quickly show you, like, I want to take the under here, the over here, and then just move along your day. So this is a really, really cool tool. I am going to put a warning here after this that says the stat-specific sims utilize trending data. Tread fucking carefully in the first 2 weeks, right? Because the trending data is going to be silly for the first couple weeks. But I think as soon as we hit like week 3 or week 4, that's when you really want to start using these tools. Before that, what I would suggest is using the player prop simulations, because these are purely based on the projections. And I will be writing up and utilizing the projections overall, right, to make some good bets overall and putting into the bet sheet. So, all right, that's the betting model. Last thing, coup de grace, contest sims. So contest sims have gotten quite a big overhaul this year. The main thing that has happened here is that we now have the regular slate sims and the showdown sims in the same app. And that's big because last year, you'll remember that for NFL, we had like the NFL range of outcomes and the showdown range of outcomes and the NFL contest sims and the showdown contest sims and the NFL optimizer and the showdown optimizer. Fuck all that. I got rid of the showdown specific pieces of things and then just rolled them into the main apps. So this now you'll be able to run the regular slate contest sims and the showdown contest sims in the same app, which I think is awesome. Now remember, when you are on either one of these, nothing is happening on this app. So this is still going to run really, really fast for both of them, right? And it's going to run even faster because I've done a lot of optimizations to the way that this app works. So what you're going to do, if you just wanted to say, show me what the sims say, right? You didn't give a shit about any of the specifics or fine-grained details. You can just come to this app and you can just hit run contest sims. And it will run the contest sims. And then it's going to show you a lot of information about the lineups. This is what is called the winners frame. So this is a contest. This is a display frame of all the lineups that won the GPP that was simulated through 1,000 times, right? So it's going to show you, what lineup won the most. This lineup won the simulation 6 times. This lineup won 5 times. It's a Washington stack and New York Jets stack. It's going to show you the salary of the lineup. It's going to show you what the projection of the lineup was, what the fantasy score was that won the simulation, right? So this lineup was projected for 125, but when it won the simulation, it scored 211. And then the GPP projection, which is just the fantasy and the projection. It's just the average of those two things. So this is the winner's frame. Now, I'm going to zoom in on my face here. I do not think that you should use the lineups from a winner's frame for your portfolio. Can I zoom any farther? I do not think that you should do that. Okay. They are a good representation of the way that lineups that are built, but I do not think that they are a representation of the lineups that you should play. And I'm going to explain why. Because these, if you were to enter in, say, this lineup that projected for 124, remember that the highest overall projection that I have in the seed frames right now is 140, right? So this lineup projects for 15 points less than my optimal in projections. It also is 47.6K. What I want you to realize when looking at this is that crazy lineups can win GPPs, okay? So don't focus on the lineups here. I'm gonna zoom in on my face again here. Don't focus on the lineups here, okay? I'm gonna show you what you focus on next. So what we focus on is down here. We focus on the winning frame statistics, the average salary that was used and the max salary, the average projections and the ownerships and the fantasy and the GPP projections. And then, moreover, the most important thing is these exposure rates, right? So I'll give some backstory as to what kind of contest I just simmed, but what you should know, Christian McCaffrey, James Conner, and George Kittle are really fucking valuable for this kind of contest. So this contest that was ran, specifically, if I go up into the info and filters, was a small contest with very sharp players, okay? So in a small contest that you consider sharp, Christian McCaffrey, James Conner, and George Kittle were by far the most valuable players to use. You would want to build around them. And then also Emeka Egbuka and Alvin Kamara. That's what you should take away from this. If you are building a core for small field sharp contests, that is what currently, this is not what it's going to show in a week. That is what currently the contest sims say that you should build around. McCaffrey, Conner, Kittle, Egbuka, Alvin Kamara, right? There you go. What you can also see is QB exposures, right? Jane Daniels showed up in 12% of the winning lineups. Daniel Jones, 8%. There's a little bit of edge on both those guys. Jordan Love only showed up in 4%, but his projected ownership is 6%, right? So he's a little bit overvalued. If you wanted to sort this by negative edge, Joe Burrow only showed up in 2.2% of the winning lineups, but he's projected for 6% ownership. He is over-owned by 3.8% by the field. Running back exposures. So, very clearly, there are 3 running backs that are really, really good for this kind of contest. Conner, McCaffrey, and Alvin Kamara. There are also a whole bunch of lineups that you just probably shouldn't, or running backs you just probably shouldn't focus that much on, right? It's basically saying, hey, if you're playing this kind of contest, you should be using these guys as running backs. Wide receivers. Egbuka is by far the most valuable player for this kind of a contest. And then Jamar Chase, Pearsall, Evans, blah, blah, blah. We can also see that there's a little bit better striation here, right? Michael Pittman was only in 1.2%, but he's projected to have 9% ownership. So this ownership is a little bit too high, right? Deebo Samuel looks over-owned. He only shows up in 6% of optimals. His projected ownership is 12.5%. You can also see what stacks were used the most. So Washington was by far the most valuable stack, but only at 12%. Indiana stacks made sense. Tennessee, Jacksonville, Cleveland. You can see what stacks made the most sense. Now, I'm going to reset the sim. I'm going to show what happens if you do not vary and medium. And let's go ahead and run this. So now if you run a medium lineup or a medium-sized contest, it's going to take a little bit longer to run things, right? That's because it needs more lineups. It is going to simulate more times. It is going to simulate with a larger player pool. So it's going to take a little bit more time to build out this kind of a contest. It should still take less than 20 seconds or so. It's still really fast. If you run a large field, you should expect it to run for about a minute. I should probably put that info somewhere on the app, but see above about an hour ago, I'm bad at coding. So there you go. Finished up. Again, do not look at these lineups. a lineup that was $43,000 won this contest. But what you should look at is down here. So these 4 guys were still by far the most valuable. But remember, Christian McCaffrey, James Conner, and George Kittle were in the 80% range in exposure before. Now Egbuka is 69%. Alvin Kamara has dropped 48%. We can see that Jaden Daniels, instead of only being in 11% of lineups that won, he's now in 14%. For team exposures, Washington, remember, they were only 11%. Now they're 14%. Now we see that New England stacks all of a sudden make up 6% of the winners for this contest. And that's because we basically said we think that people are not very good are playing this contest, right? So weirder stuff is going to win. Less projected lineups, less ownership lineups, worse lineups are going to win if you say the field is not as sharp. So that's an important thing to remember here. If you're playing something like the Millie Maker, there's a lot of fucking bad players that are playing the Millie Maker. Like a lot of bad players playing the Millie Maker. So it's better probably to run it on, if not average, below average, right? So this is a really, really important one for Showdown specifically. Now, if you have been paying attention to me for a long time, the Showdown seasons are some of my favorite things to write. I write it for Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, and Monday Night Football. And I use the contest sims to do it. So what I end up doing is I'll run the contest sims, and then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to make comparisons between the projected ownership and the exposure. I'm going to look at who has the worst edge. Remember, this ownership is not real yet, but if Darius Cooper was going to be 73% owned, he's a fucking awful play on Thursday, right? He would be by far the worst edge. By far the best edge would be Jalen Hurts. We can also look at captains, right? So the worst edge at captain is Darius Cooper at 22% captain ownership. The highest edge is Devontae Williams, Jake Elliott, and Jalen Hurts. For flex, the worst edge, Darius Cooper. Highest edge, Jalen Hurts. So being able to focus on and say, okay, at captain, I would like to have around 25% Jalen Hurts or 20%, right? Like he's only projected for 16% ownership at the captain right now. This is obviously, again, this is not going to be true on Thursday. But, you know, whatever his projected ownership is, whatever his exposure is, I just want to try to match the field on that, right? Or I want to try to come close to that. Javonte Williams, I want around 10%. We can sort this by highest ownership. I only want like 3% Darius Cooper. I want to take a big stand under on that, right? So when I write the Showdown season, this is how I'm doing it. I'm using this app. I'm using the contest sims. And we had a lot of success with Showdown sims last year. And one of the things that actually ended up happening with the Showdown sims is whatever the exposure was, that was what ended up being the ownership, right? Like the projected ownership actually ended up being worse than what the exposure ownership was for a lot of the players. So if you wanted to use this to inform your ownership decisions, I think you could do that too. And I'm going to do that as well this year as well. So this is all of the NFL stuff, right? And then on top of also using the portfolio manager, like I said, you should use the portfolio manager. It's a really powerful tool. It's going to do a lot of really, really important things. Like I said, I will show off a little bit of it right now before I start talking a little bit about strategy stuff that I think for the year. But I do have some NFL stuff that I have already saved, so I might as well show that you can upload it. So like I said, I'm going to do a more in-depth talk through and tutorial on this. Oops, I did that too quickly. Fun fact. So one of the speed optimizations that I did in Portfolio Manager recently made it so that if you switch off of this before it is done loading things, it will break. So I'm trying to think of the best way to manage that. That's not the right file. But, so wait until this little guy stops running. And then go over to manage portfolio. So a lot of the things that you can do here, I mean, I've been using the portfolio manager, really, really strong success for MLB. But one of the things that you can do that I think is really, really powerful for NFL specifically is doing things like stratifying on diversity, right? So if you wanted to aim for around 150 lineups, and I'll talk about why it doesn't give you just 150 lineups, give me 145. doing diversity, what this is going to do is it's going to give you, if we sort this by the least diversity here. Oh, well, I guess this isn't the full thing. I should download this. Let's go ahead and just download that portfolio. So there's going to be a lot of apps this year that talk about diversity scores. There's going to be a lot of apps that talk about like, oh, this is how you make it so that your lineups are different. But, oh, hey, that's not good. I should probably fix that. What the Paydirt tool does is actually uses math to dictate that, right? Like this isn't some heuristic, intuitive, defined thing. Like this is actually math that is deciding what the diversity is for a lineup, right? So when we look at this, I'm just gonna hide this shit. Okay, so if we sort this smallest to largest, you're gonna see that a lot of these lineups look very similar. They're Jaden Daniels plus Christian McCaffrey plus James Conner plus Deebo Samuel, right? Like a lot of these lineups are very similar. If we sort this by the largest, these lineups are very different. So doing things like that and saying, all right, well, you know, if I just want to say I am building for, I don't know, small field single entry stuff, right? Like give me a trim on weighted ownership. And just show me what the best lineups are. Remember, this lineup trimming stuff, this is really, really strong in terms of saying, here's the median, here's the weighted ownership. Only give me lineups that have an appropriate weighted ownership and median degradation, right? These are all lineups that you could absolutely use for small field stuff, right? So you should be using this. I'm going to be putting together some more tutorials for this specifically tomorrow. But the portfolio manager is super strong. Come ask me about it in the Discord if you'd like. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for all the NFL stuff. If you are interested in this stuff, obviously subscriptions are open. I did not raise prices because I'm not a hack. $40 a month for everything on the site. $35 a month for just NFL. $225 a month for full site access until February 28th. $210 for just NFL until February 28th. You can also do day passes. You can also do week passes. Let me be very clear here. I want people to be able to play DFS not only to make money, but also because it's a fun sport. I'm not going to nickel and dime you. I'm going to make it so that it's affordable. I'm going to make it accessible. Paydirt's core mission, the thing that I have always focused on, is that I want to make it so that strong quality tools are accessible for everyone. It is powerful models for everyone. That's what I do at Paydirt. So if you are interested in any of the things that I just showed off, you should go get a subscription. I think we're going to have a great year. So far, the introduction of the portfolio manager and a lot of the different things that I've done for MME has been a huge boon for MME players. You can ask CKK in the Discord. You can ask Cake Boss. You can ask a whole bunch of different people in the Discord and on Twitter. If the portfolio manager has upped their game, I can guarantee you that it has upped mine. It has upped a lot of different people. And just overall, the tools on the site, I think, have been optimized in a way that make it so this is a true one-stop shop now. You don't need any other subscriptions. That being said, I also think that because of the price point, if you want to have SaberSim with Paydirt, go for it. If you want to have ETR with Paydirt, go for it. But Paydirt is absolutely the best value in the industry, bar none. I will put that challenge up against anyone. I will put the projections here up against anyone, the ownership projections. I will make sure that this product is comparable and will beat nearly every other product in the industry. All right. Paydirt's the real deal. So wanted to mention that really quick before I start talking a little bit about things. I also don't want this one. Best value bar none. Damn straight. Put on a t-shirt. So, okay, now that we've talked about all the tools, one of the things that I think that I have been going over, so let's just talk a little bit about strategy things for NFL. So first off, I think that we are going to see a lot of really condensed chalk this year. I think that we're going to see a lot of people make a lot of mistakes around chalk. I think that we're going to see, similar to last year, I had predicted that last year, in terms of the way that chalk worked with contest sims, I think it's going to be twice as bad this year. I think that people are going to have high ownership on players, and then contest sims are going to say, okay, this player is going to be projected for 30% ownership, but this player is only projected for 15% ownership. And then we're going to see that just completely fuck with ownership percentages, right? Like we're going to have to be very reticent of the things that other models are doing and where the pivots are being pushed. Because about week 9 last year, we saw a drastic change in the way that ownership was acting on the very high end when there was an appropriate pivot. So very specifically, there was one instance where Jonathan Taylor was projected for 30% ownership. Derrick Henry was projected for 15% ownership. But every single contest sim out there identified that and pushed Jonathan Taylor. And when the cards flipped on Sunday, Jonathan Taylor was 32% ownership and Derrick Henry was 17% ownership. So we need to be reticent of that. I think that that's going to be more important this year as well. It's something that we're going to have to really focus on. On top of that, I think that for the middling ranges of ownership, we're going to see more condensed ownership. We're going to see way lower ownership on guys that don't have more than 10% ownership, right? Like I think that we're going to see a lot of condensed ownership towards the top. We're going to see some flip-flops on the very top. When it comes to 15 to 20% owned guys, we're going to see those guys end up right in that range. And then anybody under 15%, I think that like the 8 to 15% owned range is going to be like barren. I think there's going to be very few guys there except for like quarterbacks and tight ends. But running backs and wide receivers, I think we're going to see it be very bifurcated to either they had a lot of ownership or they had basically no ownership. And that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for us to pivot. At wide receiver specifically, I think wide receiver, we're going to be able to make a lot of money just pivoting off of the chalk wide receiver onto the cheaper or the lower owned wide receivers. The other main thing that I want to talk about when it comes to strategy and process, I've been milling back and forth about how I want to designate stacks. So the conventional wisdom that we have for stacks has been that you stack your quarterback with your wide receivers. You do a quarterback, a wide receiver, and then if you want to do a bring back, you do a bring back. But I'm kind of thinking that that is not as valuable starting this year, and maybe a little bit last year, but I wasn't quick enough to think about it. But this year I want to think about it. I think that the more valuable thing that we can probably do is look at what team we are most dependent on in our lineup rather than who our quarterback is associated to. Because I don't think the quarterback matters as much anymore. For sure, like Justin Herbert in a Chargers stack, like if you play Justin Herbert, you should play 2 of his wide receivers or 2 of his receivers, right? But I don't think that it's necessary if you play 2 of his wide receivers that you have to play Justin Herbert. So I think that stack designations this year, instead of thinking about it as centered around the wide receiver, I think that we should, or as centered around the quarterback, I think we should center it around the majority of the players that are in our lineup from a team. So an example that I have been giving has been if you have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, I don't know that it's necessary to then also have Jared Goff, right? I don't think that Jared Goff should predicate you having 2 of his receivers. Because if Jared Goff is 6,400 and Jaden Daniels is 6,700, Jaden Daniels is just a way better play there, regardless of if you have the correlation boost of having Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, because both of those guys can get there and Jared Goff can still have a pedestrian game, whereas Jaden Daniels does not need to feed 2 wide receivers in order to have a ceiling game. So then it goes to the question of, if you have Jaden Daniels alone and you have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, but you do not have a Washington wide receiver, is that a Washington stack just because you have Jameson or just because you have Jaden Daniels? In my opinion on that, this year, I think is no. I think at this point, we should be considering the stacks to be the team that has the most representation in our lineup. And that is how I have built out the portfolio manager logic. So when you use the portfolio manager logic, it is going to be predicated for your stacking based on who is most dependent in the lineup, who has the most representation in your lineup, right? It is not going to be predicated on the quarterback. I think that it's an important thing to realize that the landscape is changing, that quarterback matters less and less, not only in the way that DFS is played, and the way that pricing has changed, but also in the way that real NFL teams are approaching quarterbacks. We have Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Daniel Jones, hilarious. We also have other rushing quarterbacks that we have seen in the past. Anthony Richardson. We have I can't think of his name. I mean, even Geno Smith has like rushing upside. He's not going to rush 10 times, but like we have a lot of rushing quarterbacks now. Jalen Hurts. How the fuck could I forget Jalen Hurts? We have a lot of rushing quarterbacks now. So I think that even the NFL teams have changed the way that they look at the quarterback position. And I think that we have, as DFS players, also need to change the way that we look at the quarterback position. So I will not be addressing stacks as predicated to the quarterback this year. I will be addressing it as predicated to the team that has the largest representation in my lineup. So I just wanted to float that out there. I think that it's a deviation from general logic and the thing that we've been taught as DFS players for the last 10 years. But I think that it's time to kind of reassess the landscape on that. So my predictions this year, we're going to have series bifurcation in terms of ownership. We're going to have flip-flops at the top of the ownership range if there's an appropriate pivot. Basically, every week, I think that we will have a flip-flop, and I think that we should be reticent of that. And I think that stacks, specifically quarterback +2 stacks, quarterback, wide receiver, quarterback, or quarterback, wide receiver, and quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, I think will be largely over-owned by the field this year for the first time. And I hope that I'm right about those things, because if I am, then we make a whole bunch of money here at Paydirt. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this, then that's awesome. Thanks for hanging out with me for the last hour and a half. This is longer than I usually do solo streams. So I appreciate everybody here. If you have not grabbed a subscription over at Paydirt, I really think that you should. It's best value in the industry. I promise you that. I will put my projections, my medians, my ownership up against anybody in the industry. I'm happy to do so. I also think that dollar for dollar Paydirt is by far the best value. You get every single sport for $40 a month. No other site can say that. So thank you guys so much for the support. I love and appreciate all of you. And if you have any questions, reach out in the Discord. I'm excited to have a great NFL season. And yeah, go Paydirt. Go Dirt Dogs. Race some trophies. Bread? Yeah, bread. All right. Peace.